So you've probably heard a lot about the Epstein files, but what if I told you Joe Rogan's name is actually in them? Today we're going to break down his bizarre, indirect connection to the case and his theories on how such a dark network could operate right out in the open for so long.
Yeah, you heard that right. The story kicks off in a pretty wild place, with Rogan's own name popping up in the files. But as he explains it, it's for a reason you would absolutely never guess. He's in there for saying no.
All right, so how did this even happen? Let's get into it. This first part breaks down Rogan's very brief and very weird brush with Epstein's world.
So Rogan lays it all out. He says that back around 2017, someone he actually had on his show, a guest, was actively trying to set up a meeting for him with Jeffrey Epstein. And we're not talking about a casual, hey, you should meet this guy sometime kind of thing. Nope. This was a direct, active push to bring him into that inner circle.
And Rogan's reaction? Well, it was exactly what you'd expect from Rogan. He said he did a quick Google search on Epstein and was just completely floored, baffled that anyone would even suggest it. His response was one of pure disbelief and an immediate, hard no.
Okay, so this whole personal story, it really opens up a much bigger question, one that Rogan really wrestles with. If the red flags were so obvious to him with just one simple search, how on earth did so many other powerful, supposedly intelligent people get tangled up in this?
And this is where it gets truly fascinating. I mean, just look at the kind of people we're talking about here. Rogan points out that Epstein had this almost sinister genius for surrounding himself with the who's who of every influential field. We're talking top-tier intellectuals, famous professors like Noam Chomsky and Steven Pinker, Nobel Prize winners, big-name celebrities, comedians, and, of course, powerful politicians.
Rogan's whole argument is that this created this incredibly powerful form of, well, social proof. You get an invite to some fancy party, you walk in and you see a former US president standing there. Your guard just immediately drops, right? Their presence makes the whole thing seem legitimate.
So the theory Rogan puts forward is that for a lot of these people, the sheer allure of being in that elite circle was like a drug. It was so intoxicating that it just overrode any basic common sense. The need to be in the room was so powerful, they didn't even bother with a simple background check.
This all leads to Rogan's biggest theory. What was the real point of this whole elaborate, twisted operation?
He's pretty convinced this wasn't just about depravity. He thinks it was a tool for power, a bizarre blackmail influence thing, as he calls it, a way to get a little something on all these powerful people so you could control them, make sure they'd help you with business deals or political favors. It was a system built on secrets.
And this right here, this perfectly illustrates his main thought experiment. Rogan asks a really sharp question. What if? What if Epstein had run the exact same blackmail operation, but with consenting adult sex workers instead of underage girls? Would we ever have heard about it? Would it have ever been exposed?
The answer to that question gets seriously chilling when you hear the unbelievable, almost random story of how this global scandal actually saw the light of day. It wasn't some huge FBI sting operation. Nope, it was pure, dumb luck.
You're not going to believe this. The entire massive web of crime and deceit, it started to unravel because two teenage girls got into a fight at a Florida high school back in 2005. Seriously. That fight leads to a purse search, which turns up $300 in cash. That cash leads to a confession about giving massages to a rich man. And finally, a stepmother's report to the police is what kicked off the very first investigation. It's just wild. And get this. That one high school? Just the tip of the iceberg. Investigators later called it a focal point for recruitment. They identified at least 15 students from that school alone who were lured into Epstein's network. It just highlights how predatory the whole operation really was.
So, when you're faced with a reality this dark, one that was only exposed by a total fluke, how do you even process that? Well, Rogan suggests a particular mindset for navigating this kind of information.
He calls it taking the gray pill. Think of it this way. It's not the white pill, where you're blindly optimistic about everything. And it's not the black pill, where you just fall into total despair. It's this middle ground, this sober acknowledgement that, yeah, really dark, corrupt forces exist in positions of power, but at the same time, you hold on to hope that we, as a society, can still pull through and get better. And the internet is a huge part of this. The crucial thing to understand is that it's a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, it floods us with all this toxic, disturbing information like the Epstein case. But on the other hand, it means that more people than ever before actually understand how these systems of power really work behind the curtain. And that brings us to the final, and frankly, pretty unsettling thought that Rogan leaves us with. If a random high school fight could blow open something this massive, what else is out there? What other dark systems are operating just under the surface, just waiting for a chance event to drag them into the light?